Hello and welcome to our poster. My name is Bill Silvia and I'm here to present on associations between lesbian women and fat. So in stereotyped contexts, women in the United States and in many other countries are stereotyped to be thinner than men, or at least to be thinking or trying to be thinner than men. In general, the stereotype of femininity tends to include thinness. However, lesbian women, despite being women, have their own sets of stereotypes, often at odds with those of women in general, which leads us to our assumptions that women of lower weight are perceived to be more feminine than women of higher weight. Lesbian women are perceived to be less feminine and more masculine than straight women. Therefore, as a result of these theoretical understandings, we predicted that women of higher weight will be perceived as more likely to be lesbian than women of lower weight, which led us to our sets of hypotheses that we tested across 3 studies. In our first study, we conducted an implicit association test, as well as asking several explicit questions with undergraduate students. What we found across these studies is that there was definitely an association between lesbian women and a higher body weight and between straight women and a smaller body weight. Actually, instead of and, I should say or, which is probably the main problem with this methodology, is that while we definitely found significant findings, we could not parse how these findings particularly worked. What were the mechanisms behind them? This led us to study 2, where we tested our theory with archival data. We used information from the Chicago Face Database, which had information on faces, as well as ratings on how feminine or masculine they were. And we used a model identified by Coetzee et al., which I am not certain how to pronounce, so I apologize if anybody knows and I'm wrong. But we conducted several regression analyses using this data. We did find that there was a relationship between the weight as identified for women in the Coetzee model and femininity and masculinity, which continue to support our hypotheses. It also allowed us to generate stimuli to further test our hypotheses, which brings us to study 3, where we showed participants a total of 90 faces. We asked them to rate the subjective weight of the person in the face and how they perceived the sexual orientation of the person in the face. Now, judging the weight was a way of verifying that the information we were using and the model Coetzee identified was valid for the study, which we did find to be highly correlated with our findings. We also did find there was a relationship in the direction we expected for weight and sexual orientation. However, this relationship was not as clear-cut with white women. We used white as a variable just because we knew that it was associated with, we knew that race is associated with masculinity and femininity stereotypes. So we used that as a separate analysis, and we did find there's some interesting effect there with several possible explanations. So overall, across these studies, we did find evidence to support the idea that women of lower weight and straight women are perceived as more feminine and less masculine than women of higher weight and lesbian women respectively, and that women of higher weight were also perceived as more likely to be lesbian or bisexual than women of lower weight were. We do have several future directions we're going to be taking this research in. Part of that is how this affects scenarios with more diverse information, essentially more ecologically valid scenarios, as well as directionality and possibly further effects of race. That is the end of our time. So I hope you have a great day, and I hope you found this information interesting.